A legal firestorm of unprecedented scale has just erupted within the Little People, Big World universe, threatening to permanently alter the relationships of the Roloff family and their standing with the network that made them famous. We have uncovered exclusive details of a bombshell lawsuit that pits Amy Roloff and the television network TLC directly against Matt Roloff and Caryn Chandler. The stakes? A staggering $1.5 million judgment stemming from accusations of deliberate sabotage, corporate interference, and a malicious scheme designed to destroy Amy's burgeoning solo career. This isn't just family drama. Sources are calling this a calculated, bad faith attack that backfired in the most spectacular way imaginable. At the heart of this legal war is a television special that was meant to be Amy's triumphant next chapter, a project that was allegedly killed behind the scenes by Matt and Caryn's jealousy. Now, the network is fighting back, and they've chosen Amy's side. Before we dive into the shocking court documents and insider testimony that lay this entire conspiracy bare, we need you to do us a huge favor. This story is developing fast, and we'll be bringing you every update. To make sure you don't miss a thing, please take a second to hit that powerful like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell. Your support allows us to dig deep and bring you the stories that no one else is covering. Now, let's get into the stunning details of the lawsuit that could cost Matt and Caryn everything. To fully understand the gravity of this situation, we have to go back to the massive success of Amy and Chris Merrick's wedding special, a television event TLC billed as Amy's second act. For the network, this wasn't just another reality TV wedding, it was a ratings juggernaut. It proved beyond any doubt that Amy Roloff was a formidable, standalone star. Viewers who have followed her for years were deeply invested in her journey of finding happiness after her divorce from Matt. They tuned in by the millions to watch her walk down the aisle on Roloff Farms, a place so intertwined with her past as she stepped into a new future with Chris. The special was a triumph of storytelling and a huge financial win for TLC. Network executives, according to an inside source, were ecstatic. They saw a golden opportunity. Amy possessed what they call in the industry a 4-quadrant appeal. She resonated with younger viewers who had grown up with the show, older viewers who related to her life changes, and everyone in between. She was authentic, relatable, and, most importantly, bankable. This success immediately sparked conversations in the executive suites at TLC. The question wasn't if they should give Amy her own project, but what it should be. Our sources, who have connections deep within the production company, have confirmed that the network moved quickly to capitalize on the momentum from the wedding. They offered Amy a pilot special for her very own series. The concept was simple yet brilliant, a travel and lifestyle show tentatively titled Amy's Oregon Adventure. The premise was for Amy and Chris to embark on a series of road trips, exploring the hidden gems of their home state. They would visit charming small towns, explore the breathtaking Oregon coast, sample food from local artisan producers, and engage in lighthearted adventures. The show was envisioned as a warm, feel-good program that would leverage Amy's love for cooking and Chris's passion for exploring. It was the perfect vehicle to showcase Amy's personality outside the often tense confines of Roloff Farms. TLC was all in. A preliminary budget of several $100,000 was approved for the pilot episode alone. A seasoned production crew, some of whom had worked on major travel and Food Network shows, was hired. Location scouts were already mapping out a route for the first episode, which was set to feature a scenic drive through the Columbia River Gorge. The network's ad sales department, armed with the stellar ratings from Amy's second act, began pre-selling commercial slots to major brands at a premium. The projected profit for the network from the pilot and the subsequent full series order they were confident would follow was calculated to be a cool $1.5 million. For Amy, this was more than just a TV show. It was the culmination of her entire journey. It was a chance to step fully into her own identity, separate from the Roloff Farms saga, and build a new legacy. She was, as one producer put it, over the moon. However, back at Roloff Farms, this news was not met with celebration. According to multiple sources close to the family, Caryn Chandler saw Amy's potential stardom as a direct and existential threat. For years, the narrative of little people, big world had been dominated by the farm and Matt's projects. Caryn, having transitioned from farm manager to Matt's partner, had carved out a significant role for herself on the show. The central drama often revolved around Matt, their relationship, the new dream house, and the ongoing farm succession saga. But with Amy launching a successful solo franchise, the balance of power within the LPBW brand was about to shift dramatically. An insider explained the dynamic this way. Caryn and Matt's storyline is tied to the farm. If Amy becomes a bigger star with her own show, the network's focus and the audience's attention could move away from them. Suddenly, their will they or won't they finish the big house plotline looks a lot less important. It threatened their screen time, their influence, and ultimately their paycheck. The fear, reportedly, was that a successful Amy's Oregon adventure would make Amy the undisputed queen of the LPBW universe, while Matt and Caryn would be relegated to a supporting role. This was a scenario Caryn was allegedly unwilling to accept. It was at this point, our sources claim, that a deliberate and calculated plan was put into motion to kill the project before it could even begin. According to a source with knowledge of their legal dealings, Caryn was the primary driver of this strategy. She allegedly convinced Matt that Amy's new show was a violation of their collective family agreements and would dilute the main brand. Together, they orchestrated what the network would later call in its lawsuit a campaign of malicious interference. The weapon they chose was not a public statement or a private plea, but a legal threat designed to strike fear into the heart of the network's corporate structure. Caryn, leveraging her business acumen and influence over Matt, reportedly directed their lawyer to draft a formal cease and desist letter. This wasn't just a simple letter of complaint. It was a meticulously crafted legal document filled with intimidating jargon and fraudulent claims. The centerpiece of this letter was a stunningly bold assertion that any television show featuring Amy Roloff in a travel or lifestyle format was a direct violation of a non-compete clause embedded within the original Roloff family contract signed with TLC back when the show first began. The letter claimed this clause, which had supposedly been dormant for years, gave Matt, as the family patriarch and initial signatory, veto power over any spin-off projects that could be seen as competing with the core Little People, Big World brand. The letter fraudulently alleged that Amy's Oregon adventure fit this description perfectly, and that by producing it, TLC was in material breach of contract. This letter, sent via courier to the highest levels of TLC's legal department, landed like a bomb. In the world of corporate television, the mere threat of a lawsuit from the stars of a flagship show is enough to cause chaos. Production schedules, insurance policies, and investor confidence are all built on a foundation of legal stability. A breach of contract lawsuit, even a baseless one, can lead to millions in legal fees, damaging press, and production delays that can kill a project. The network's legal department, while highly competent, was initially spooked. They had a fiduciary duty to protect the corporation from potential litigation. The letter was aggressive, citing specific, though fabricated, contractual articles and threatening immediate legal action for damages if production on Amy's special was not halted at once. The effect was immediate and devastating. The head of programming, acting on the advice of the spooked legal team, made a painful call. Production on Amy's Oregon adventure was to be put on indefinite hold pending a full review of the claim. The phone calls went out. The director, the producers, the crew who were just days away from starting to film, everyone was told to stand down. Amy Roloff, who had been excitedly preparing for her first shoot, received the news with shock and confusion. She was told there was a legal complication involving her contract that needed to be sorted out. She had no idea that the complication originated from her ex-husband and his partner. For Amy, it was a gut-wrenching moment of whiplash, going from the highest professional high of her career to a sudden, inexplicable halt. But while the initial gambit had worked, Matt and Caryn had severely underestimated the network they were dealing with. TLC was not just some small production house. It was a major media corporation with a formidable legal arsenal. And they were furious. They felt they were being bullied and manipulated by their own talent. The first order of business was to verify the claim. The network's top entertainment lawyers were tasked with a deep dive into every contract ever signed by any member of the Roloff family. They pulled the original 2005 agreement, all subsequent amendments, renewals, and individual talent contracts. They worked through the weekend, poring over thousands of pages of dense legal text, searching for the non-compete clause that Matt and Caryn's lawyer had cited. And they found nothing, absolutely nothing. The clause, as described in the cease and desist letter, did not exist. It was a complete and utter fabrication. There was no contractual language that gave Matt veto power over Amy's solo projects. There was no clause preventing a family member from participating in a travel-themed spinoff. It was, as one of the network's lawyers would later state in a sworn deposition, a ghost clause, invented out of thin air for the sole purpose of intimidation. The realization washed over the TLC executives. They had been duped. This wasn't a legitimate legal dispute. It was a bad faith threat, a fraudulent claim designed to trick them into canceling a project they were heavily invested in. The network's anger, which had been simmering, now boiled over into cold corporate fury. They had been played for fools. Their business operations were interfered with. And one of their most valuable and loyal talents, Amy Roloff, had been financially and emotionally damaged in the process. This is where the story takes a dramatic turn. TLC decided it would not take this attack lying down. They saw Matt and Caryn's actions not as a family squabble, but as a direct assault on their business. The legal team, now armed with the truth, shifted from a defensive posture to an offensive one. They began building a case against Matt and Caryn for a specific and serious business crime: tortious interference. This legal concept essentially means deliberately interfering with another's business or contractual relationship, causing them financial harm. TLC's lawyers believed they had a textbook case. Matt and Caryn had knowingly used a fraudulent legal claim to coerce the network into breaking its new business relationship with Amy, thereby destroying the $1.5 million Amy's Oregon Adventure project. The network then made a crucial strategic decision. They realized they were not the only injured party. Amy Roloff was the primary target of the sabotage. Her show was canceled, her income from it was lost, and her professional reputation was put in jeopardy. So they approached Amy. In a series of meetings, they laid out the entire situation for her: the cease and desist letter, the fabricated non-compete clause, and the evidence that this was a deliberate scheme orchestrated by Matt and Caryn. They presented her with an opportunity not just for justice, but for a powerful alliance. TLC invited Amy to join them as a co-plaintiff in a massive lawsuit against Matt and Caryn. They would fund the entire legal battle with their high-powered corporate law firm, and she would be a named partner in the fight. For Amy, this must have been a moment of profound vindication and empowerment. After years of feeling sidelined, She now had the full weight and resources of a media giant behind her, ready to fight on her behalf. She agreed. The lawsuit was filed, sending shockwaves through the reality television industry. The official filing read, TLC Television and Miss Amy Roloff, plaintiffs, versus Mr. Matthew Roloff and Miss Caryn Chandler, defendants. The complaint was for tortious interference with a business relationship, fraud, and sought damages in the full amount of the canceled project's projected value, $1.5 million. The legal filing laid out the entire narrative in damning detail. It chronicled the success of Amy's wedding special, the greenlighting of her new show, the network's financial investment, and then detailed the arrival of the fraudulent and malicious cease and desist letter. It included sworn affidavits from network executives and contract lawyers confirming that the non-compete clause was a complete fabrication. The lawsuit painted a picture of Matt and Caryn as petty, jealous actors who used deceptive legal tactics to sabotage a business rival, who in this case was also their own family member. When news of the lawsuit broke, Matt and Caryn were reportedly stunned. They had expected the network to quietly shelve Amy's project and for the issue to go away. They never anticipated that TLC would call their bluff and retaliate with a multi-million-dollar legal offensive. Their plan had backfired in the most catastrophic way possible. They were now facing a legal battle against a corporation with virtually unlimited resources and an ironclad case. The case moved quickly into the discovery phase, where the network's lawyers began deposing key figures. This is where the story gets even more compelling. During his deposition, Matt Roloff reportedly struggled to defend his position. When presented with the original contracts and asked by TLC's lawyers to point to the specific non-compete clause he had claimed existed, he was unable to do so. Sources familiar with the deposition transcripts say he became evasive, claiming it was his understanding of the agreement, but he could not provide any factual basis for the claim. Caryn Chandler's deposition was described by one source as even more disastrous. She allegedly attempted to frame the issue as a simple family misunderstanding that had been blown out of proportion. However, when confronted with evidence, including emails between her and their lawyer discussing the specific wording of the cease and desist letter, her defense began to crumble. The network's lawyers were relentless, painting her as the architect of the scheme, motivated by a desire to protect her and Matt's standing on the flagship show. The discovery phase yielded a mountain of evidence in favor of the plaintiffs, Amy and TLC. The case was so overwhelmingly one-sided that Matt and Caryn's lawyers reportedly advised them to seek a settlement. However, believing they could still argue their case in court, they refused, setting the stage for a dramatic courtroom showdown. The trial was a masterclass in corporate litigation. TLC's legal team was polished, prepared, and ruthless. They presented a clear, simple narrative to the judge and jury. This was a case of business sabotage, plain and simple. The highlight of the trial was when a high-ranking TLC network executive took the stand. This was the moment where the network officially and publicly declared its loyalty to Amy. The scene, as described by a courtroom observer, was electric. The network's own high-powered lawyer began the questioning. "Can you please state your name and position for the court? My name is," executive's name, "and I am the Senior Vice President of Programming for TLC. Were you involved in the development of a new project with Miss Amy Roloff following the success of her wedding special?" "I was. I personally championed the project. It was called Amy's Oregon Adventure, and we believed it had enormous potential." "The network invested a significant amount of capital into this project, correct?" "Yes, a very significant amount. We had a full production team, a budget, and an advertising strategy in place. We were ready to go." The lawyer then turned his attention to the core of the issue. "Why did you halt production on Amy's Oregon Adventure?" The executive looked directly at the jury. "We received an aggressive legal threat from Mr. Roloff's representative. It was a cease and desist letter claiming we were in breach of contract. As a public company, we cannot expose the network to that kind of litigation, so we had to pause all activity to assess the threat. And after your own extensive legal review conducted by your internal and external counsel, did you find any merit whatsoever to their claim of a non-compete clause? The executive's response was firm and clear. Absolutely none. It was a complete fabrication. There is no such clause in any contract with the Roloff family. It was, in our professional opinion, a bad faith threat designed to intimidate us and, more importantly, to financially damage one of our most valued and respected talents, Ms. Roloff. The lawyer walked towards the jury box. What was the direct financial result of this interference, of this fabricated legal threat? The executive didn't hesitate. It cost us everything. It cost us the entire $1.5 million projected profit, which includes our initial investment in the pilot and the projected ad revenue from the series. It was a direct, malicious, and incredibly costly attack on our business and on Amy's career. The testimony was devastating. It was the network itself under oath declaring that Matt and Caryn had lied and had done so with malicious intent. The executive's words painted a clear picture for the court. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate act of sabotage based on a fraudulent claim. When Matt and Caryn's lawyer attempted to cross-examine the executive, he was met with the same unshakable confidence. The executive calmly dismantled every argument, pointing out that the network had a long and positive history with Amy and had no reason to cancel her show other than the direct legal threat they received. He effectively positioned TLC and Amy as the victims of a corporate shakedown. The defense had no answer. Their entire case was built on a non-existent clause in a contract, and the owner of that contract, TLC, was on the stand testifying against them. The rest of the trial proceeded along the same lines. Legal experts were brought in to testify that creating a fake legal claim to interfere with a contract is a clear violation of business law. Financial analysts confirmed the network's $1.5 million loss calculation. Amy Roloff also took the stand not as a vengeful ex-wife, but as a professional businesswoman whose opportunity had been stolen from her. She spoke about her excitement for the project, her plans for the show, and the deep sense of betrayal she felt upon learning the truth about why it was canceled. Her testimony was powerful and resonated deeply with the jury, who saw a woman who had been wronged by those she once trusted. The defense's case, in contrast, was weak and appeared to be grasping at straws. They tried to argue that it was all a misunderstanding of complex legal language, but they could never produce the language they claimed to have misunderstood. The trial was, for all intents and purposes, a slam dunk for the plaintiffs. A multi-billion-dollar corporation's legal team, allied with a sympathetic public figure versus a fabricated claim, was simply no contest. The jury was sent to deliberate, but everyone in the courtroom knew which way the verdict would fall. The wait for the verdict was short. The jury returned in less than 3 hours, a clear sign of a decisive conclusion. Matt and Caryn sat at the defense table, their faces grim. Amy sat beside her network allies, composed and resolute. The foreman handed the verdict to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. The judge read the document silently for a moment before looking out at the courtroom. The room was silent. Then he spoke. The judge's ruling was a complete and total victory for Amy and TLC, and a scathing rebuke of Matt and Caryn. He did not hold back in his assessment of their actions. I have reviewed the jury's verdict, and this court is in full agreement with their findings, the judge began, his voice echoing through the silent courtroom. The evidence presented in this case is not just compelling, it is overwhelming. The defendants, Mr. Roloff and Ms. Chandler, engaged in a clear and deliberate act of tortious interference. This was a frivolous and malicious legal action with one clear purpose: to interfere with the plaintiff's valid and promising business relationship. He paused, looking directly at Matt and Caryn. The defendants used fraudulent legal claims to sabotage a commercial project not because of any legitimate contractual dispute, but seemingly out of personal animosity and professional jealousy. This court does not take kindly to the weaponization of the legal system to settle personal scores or to gain an unfair business advantage. Such actions undermine the integrity of our entire legal framework. The judge then delivered the final crushing blow. Therefore, judgment is for the plaintiffs, TLC Television, and Miss Amy Roloff. The defendants, Mr. Roloff and Ms. Chandler, are hereby ordered to pay the full $1.5 million in damages to cover the losses from the canceled special. This amount is to be paid jointly and severally. This ruling should serve as a clear message that this type of behavior has severe and significant consequences. The sound of a gavel strike sealed their fate. It was over. Amy and TLC had won a massive, decisive victory. The $1.5 million judgment was not just a financial penalty. It was a public declaration that Matt and Caryn's scheme had been exposed and punished. The aftermath of the verdict was swift and dramatic. The financial blow to Matt and Caryn was immense. A $1.5 million judgment is a staggering amount of money, even for successful reality TV stars. Legal experts we consulted suggest that they would likely have to liquidate assets to satisfy the judgment. This could potentially mean selling property or parts of their business interests. The failed sabotage attempt had cost them dearly, not just in money, but in reputation. The court's finding of malicious and fraudulent behavior would be a permanent stain on their public image. But for Amy, the outcome was transformative. She had been vindicated in the most public way possible. The network, which had now invested heavily in fighting for her, was more committed to her than ever before. Their loyalty had been forged in the fire of this legal battle. According to our sources inside the network, in the wake of the trial, TLC immediately moved to make things right with Amy. They not only resurrected the idea of her solo show, but expanded it. They saw the public support for Amy during the trial and realized her story was now even more compelling. They greenlit a whole new series for her with an even bigger budget. The concept was broadened from just Oregon to Amy's American Adventure, a full-fledged travel and food show that would see her and Chris explore different regions of the country. And in the ultimate irony, the seed money for this new, bigger, and better series was effectively being funded by the $1.5 million judgment Matt and Caryn were forced to pay. Their petty jealousy, their attempt to keep her down, had backfired so completely that it ended up launching her solo career into the stratosphere. Amy Roloff's second act was no longer just a wedding special. It was a full-blown television franchise born from the ashes of her ex-husband's failed attempt to sabotage her. She had not only won in the court of law, but she had won the entire war for her career and her independence. The shockwaves from that courtroom verdict are now radiating outwards, fundamentally reshaping the entire landscape of the Roloff family and their television empire. The $1.5 million judgment was not just the end of a lawsuit, it was the beginning of a new and brutal reality for Matt Roloff and Caryn Chandler. Sources who were present in the courtroom described their reaction not as one of anger or defiance, but of pure, unadulterated shock. As the judge's final words echoed and the gavel fell, Matt reportedly just stared blankly ahead, his face pale. Caryn, the alleged architect of the entire scheme, seemed to shrink in her seat, her usual confident demeanor completely gone, replaced by a look of utter defeat. They left the courthouse through a side door, avoiding the press, their silence speaking volumes. This wasn't just a financial loss, it was a public humiliation of the highest order. They had been officially branded as malicious and fraudulent by a court of law, and the consequences were just beginning. This is where our exclusive reporting connects the dots between this secret legal battle and the public drama that has been playing out for months. For the longest time, viewers have been asking the same question. Why is Matt so desperate to sell a portion of Roloff Farms? His public explanations have always felt thin. He's talked about retirement, about not being able to manage the upkeep, about his kids not wanting it. But now, with the revelation of this $1.5 million judgment, we have what we believe is the real hidden reason. This isn't about retirement, it's about paying a massive court-ordered debt. The sale of the farm is no longer a choice for his legacy. We believe it has become a financial necessity directly caused by their failed attempt to sabotage Amy. Let's break down the financial catastrophe they are now facing. A $1.5 million cash payment is a monumental sum. Our financial sources suggest that it's highly unlikely they have that kind of liquid cash just sitting in a bank account. Much of their wealth is tied up in assets, primarily Roloff Farms itself and the various equipment and properties associated with it. To satisfy the judgment, they would need to raise cash and fast. Suddenly, Matt's frantic attempts to sell the big house property take on a whole new light. The initial high asking price, the subsequent price drops, the failed attempt to turn it into a short-term rental, it all paints a picture of a man under extreme financial duress. The pressure from the court to pay Amy and TLC would be immense. Legal judgments accrue interest, and failure to pay can result in liens being placed on property and assets being seized. We have a report from an insider close to the family's financial dealings that claims Matt and Caryn held a series of frantic meetings with their accountants and financial advisors in the days following the verdict. The topic of these meetings was reportedly a liquidity crisis. They were exploring every possible option, taking out a massive loan against the farm, selling off valuable farm equipment, and, of course, the fastest option, selling a piece of the farm itself. This theory reframes the entire narrative surrounding the farm sale. The tension with Zach and Tori wasn't just about a failed negotiation. It was likely exacerbated by Matt's desperation for a quick sale to cover this secret, embarrassing debt. He needed top dollar from his kids, not because of a fair market value, but because he had $1.5 million bill to pay. When Zach and Jeremy couldn't or wouldn't meet his inflated price, he was forced to put it on the open market, all while hiding the real reason for his urgency. This also throws the construction of their lavish dream house into serious jeopardy. Building a custom luxury home is an enormous cash drain. It's very possible that the funds they had allocated for that project are now earmarked for the lawsuit payment. This could explain the seemingly slow progress on the house that has been noted by fans. The project may be on hold indefinitely, a constant, half-finished monument to their failed scheme. The irony is almost poetic. The dream house, a symbol of their future together, may be sacrificed to pay for the damage they caused to Amy's future. Their attempt to consolidate power and build their own legacy on the farm has resulted in a situation where they might have to sell off the most valuable parts of that very legacy. While Matt and Caryn are trapped in a financial and public relations nightmare of their own making, Amy Roloff's world is blossoming. Her victory in court was not just about the money, it was about liberation. She was finally and completely free from the shadow of Roloff Farms and her past with Matt. The network, now her staunchest ally, is treating her like royalty. Our sources at the production company have confirmed that Amy's American adventure is not just in development. It's being fast-tracked with a budget that dwarfs the original Oregon pilot. TLC sees her as their next big lifestyle star in the vein of a Joanna Gaines or a Ree Drummond, but with a built-in, deeply loyal audience cultivated over 2 decades. The new show's concept is a significant upgrade. The plan is for Amy and Chris to travel across the United States in a high-end RV, exploring regional cuisines and local cultures. Each episode will focus on a different state or region. One episode might see them learning to make authentic gumbo in New Orleans. The next could have them exploring the lobster shacks of Maine, and another could feature them visiting artisan cheesemakers in Wisconsin. The show is designed to be visually stunning, filled with sweeping drone shots of the American landscape, and intimate, heartwarming moments of Amy and Chris discovering new places together. It's a celebration of food, travel, and second chances. Chris Marek, who was always a popular addition to the show, is being positioned as the perfect co-host. His easygoing nature and genuine love for adventure are the ideal complement to Amy's warmth and culinary curiosity. Behind the scenes, the network is pulling out all the stops. They've hired a showrunner from a popular Food Network series to helm the project. A team of celebrity chefs has reportedly been consulted to help design the culinary segments. And in a move that shows just how much faith they have in her, the network has already ordered a full 8-episode season, bypassing the traditional pilot process entirely. For Amy, this is the ultimate validation. She is no longer just a cast member on a family reality show. She is the executive producer and star of her own national television series. The power dynamic has been completely inverted. She is now arguably the most valuable and powerful asset in the entire Little People, Big World franchise, and she achieved it by standing up for herself with the backing of a network that recognized her true worth. Of course, this legal war and its dramatic outcome did not happen in a vacuum. The rest of the Roloff family has been forced to navigate the fallout, and it has deepened the already significant cracks in their relationships. The most profound impact has been on the relationship between Matt and his twin sons, Zach and Jeremy. We can now theorize with a high degree of confidence that the lawsuit was the true catalyst for the explosive feud between Matt and Zach. Imagine Zach's position. He learns that his father and Caryn have been secretly trying to sabotage his mother's career with a fraudulent legal claim. As the only child still actively filming Little People, Big World, he would have been caught in the middle. His loyalty would have been tested, and by all accounts, he chose his mother's side, or at the very least refused to support his father's actions. This provides crucial context for their on-screen arguments about the farm. When Zach accused his father of creating a hostile environment and not negotiating in good faith, he wasn't just talking about a real estate deal. He was likely referencing this much deeper, more personal betrayal. His decision to move his family an hour away to Battleground, Washington, can now be seen not as a simple search for a new home, but as a deliberate act of creating physical and emotional distance from the toxicity emanating from Matt and Caryn. Tori's public statements about needing to do what's best for her family and creating healthy boundaries suddenly carry a much heavier weight. They weren't just stepping away from the farm. They were stepping away from the deception and the infighting that the lawsuit represented. They were siding with Amy, and in doing so, they drew a line in the sand that Matt and Caryn could not cross. Jeremy and Audrey, who have worked hard to cultivate their own brand separate from the show, found themselves in an equally precarious position. Our sources suggest they attempted to remain neutral, a move that likely pleased no one. On one hand, siding with Matt could have alienated their significant online following, which has a large overlap with Amy's fan base. On the other hand, publicly condemning Matt could have burned a bridge with the man who still controlled the family farm they had once dreamed of owning. Their silence on the matter has been deafening. It's possible that they see Matt's financial desperation as a potential opportunity. With Matt needing cash, could Jeremy swoop in with a lower offer for a piece of the farm? It's a cynical thought, but in a family where business and relationships are so deeply intertwined, it's a plausible scenario. The lawsuit has forced every member of the family to show their cards, and the result is a family more fractured than ever before. This brings us to the biggest question of all. What is the future of the flagship show, Little People, Big World? How can a show built on the premise of a family working and living together continue when its main stars have just concluded a bitter multi-million-dollar legal war? We have a report from a production insider that a crisis meeting was held at TLC headquarters the week after the verdict. The show's producers and network executives were in a panic. Their top-rated show was now a logistical and emotional minefield. How could they possibly script a scene where Amy and Caryn are cordial at a family gathering? How can Matt give Amy advice on a home project when his actions just cost her a massive opportunity that he now has to pay for? The very premise of the show has become almost unworkable. According to this source, there were two main camps in the meeting. One group argued for canceling the show altogether. They believed the animosity was too real, the legal history too toxic, and that forcing them to interact on camera would be inauthentic and potentially exploitative. They argued it was time to end the era of little people, big world, and focus on the successful spinoff with Amy. However, a second, more powerful group argued the opposite. They saw this new dynamic not as a problem, but as a goldmine for drama. They argued that viewers are more invested than ever and would tune in record numbers to watch the excruciatingly awkward and tense interactions. They proposed a new direction for the show, one that leans into the Cold War between the two camps. The prevailing theory is that the network will, in fact, renew the show, but under a new set of rules. Their contracts likely require them to film a certain number of episodes, and TLC will enforce those contracts. But the power has shifted entirely to Amy. She is now the network's protected star. She can dictate her terms. She can refuse to film scenes she's uncomfortable with. She no longer needs the show for financial security. The show, in many ways, now needs her to maintain its legitimacy. We can expect to see a season with more separate filming than ever before. We'll follow Matt and Caryn struggle to pay the judgment and manage the farm, and we'll see Amy and Chris planning their new life in their new show. But the moments where they are forced to cross paths will be rare and charged with an almost unbearable tension. Every polite hello at a grandchild's birthday party will be loaded with the subtext of a $1.5 million betrayal. As we bring this report up to the present day, we are seeing the real-world evidence of this new Cold War. Matt and Caryn have been unusually quiet on their social media platforms, a stark contrast to their usual frequent updates on the farm and house projects. This social media silence is seen by many as a direct result of their legal defeat. They are hunkering down, trying to avoid the public scrutiny and the inevitable flood of questions from fans who are now learning about this story. Meanwhile, Amy has been more active than ever, posting cheerful updates about her life with Chris, her cooking, and her travels, all while carefully avoiding any direct mention of the lawsuit. She is taking the high road, letting her victory and her new projects speak for themselves. The most recent insider report we have received is perhaps the most telling. A source close to the LPBW production claims that the first day of filming for the new season took place last week, and it was a disaster. The scene involved a brief, necessary interaction between Amy and Matt regarding a logistical issue with the farm. The source described the atmosphere on set as ice cold. The crew was reportedly walking on eggshells, and the tension between Matt and Amy was so palpable you could cut it with a knife. They exchanged only a few terse, necessary words before retreating to their separate corners of the property. Caryn was nowhere to be seen. It appears that this is the new normal for little people. Big world. A family shattered by greed and jealousy, forced to perform the illusion of togetherness for the cameras, all while nursing the deep wounds of a legal war that has changed everything forever. The second act of Amy's life has truly begun, and it seems the final act for the Roloff family, as we know it, may be tragically underway.